Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. Let's be honest, some days we're all a bit of a dumpster fire. Joining me inside the Bachelor Pad this week is a guest I guarantee that you didn't see coming with a topic that no one's ready to talk about. Actually, I'm going to edit around this. Khaled, how do I say your last name?
It's not that bad. Kteily.
Kteily? Okay.
Yeah.
I looked at that and I was like, I don't know. Joining us this week is Khaled Kteily. Khaled, thank you so much for making time for us this afternoon.
Hey,
How are
Josh, my,
you?
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Okay. Today's episode is one that I'm excited about. I'm pretty sure you're excited to educate people on, and I guarantee our audience hasn't thought enough about. Okay. And that is fertility. Normally, when we hear fertility, we think women's fertility, but they're only half the equation. Men play a pretty decent role in that as well.
Couldn't
So,
agree more. Yeah.
yeah. So I got to say, sperm might be stupid. They run the race and then they finish, and that's it. But I don't think our decisions need to be. Sperm counts are dropping all around the country, all around the world, it seems like. And so is accountability, because it's not just genetics that play a role into it. So before we dive into all the science, all the craziness of this, can you tell me, how did you get into sperm?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I love being able to talk about this topic for a number of reasons. The first of which is, look, it kind of grabs you by the attention, right? You hear sperm, you're usually thinking like high school locker room jokes. You think about maybe a video you have watched recently. For a lot of people, there's either a jokey or almost skeevy element to it. But what I always say is that, look, sperm is funny until it's not. Sperm is funny until you are trying to have a child with the person you love the most in the world and you're not able to. Sperm is funny until you're the 1 in 6 couples that are facing infertility. Sperm is funny until you realize that actually the quality of your sperm is predictive of your risk of cancer and diabetes and literally how long you are going to live. And we talk so much about fertility as a women's issue. We're all told that from a very young age, right? And certainly women are beaten over the head with that fact from a very young age, from the biological clock to, when they need to be thinking about having a family. Our society tells men, hey, you can have kids whenever you want. And in fact, you should be worried about accidentally getting someone pregnant. And then when you actually dig into it, sperm counts are down 50 to 60% over the last 40. Sperm quality gets worse the older you get. The older you are, the more DNA damage you have in your sperm that you're going to pass on to your kids. So the society we're living in is infesting us with microplastics that are in everything we eat and breathe and live. And by the way, it's in your semen, it's in your testicles, it's in your penis. So all of these things are fascinating. And I'm glad we have this time to talk about it. Because the average guy who's listening to it, right, to your point, is thinking about being a dad or a dumpster fire or being an adult and just figuring out all of this stuff. One of the things that you should be figuring out for yourself is, how do you think about what it will mean to someday have a family or to have a family of your own? And what role does your sperm actually play in helping you get there?
That's a lot of thought into it. A lot of times, especially here in the States, and especially when you are in that 20 something, 30 something, we're really reactive when it comes to our health. We aren't really thinking big picture or what's coming down the line. You're right. We're just told you can be 80 and still,
Yeah.
get somebody knocked up.
Yeah.
But
And by the way, I mean,
realistic,
Robert De Niro just had a kid at the age of 79. So it is technically possible, but we don't hear about all the infertility cases. We don't hear about the miscarriages. We don't hear about the children born with special needs and genetic conditions because they have an older dad who's got worse quality sperm.
I always say, let's not talk about the outlier. We're talking about the majority here.
Totally.
And every once in a while, you're right, you'll hear about somebody who's a little later in life who has a kid, but there are probably thousands or hundreds of thousands of cases in between that of people in their prime, so to speak, who are struggling. And it's a really, especially in the male community, that's a really hard topic to bring up, is low sperm count.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause yeah, I mean,
There's a big about it.
your sperm count is your virility, is your masculinity, right? And so to be able to be like, hey, buddy, I don't know what to do, I got bad sperm, feels like you're saying that you're less of a man.
100%. And that's something that you're even afraid to talk about with your partner, not just the guys, not just your
I
doctor,
would be
but
more scared to talk about it with my partner. I would be more
exactly.
scared to have to tell my partner, "Hey, I don't know if I can give you kids. I don't know if I can give you a family. It may just be you and me forever."
And can you kind of explain why you think all of a sudden we've started to notice this decline in sperm count?
Totally. Well, let me start with a couple facts just to contextualize things. So, we talk about fertility as a women's issue. The reality is, in cases of infertility, it is just as likely, if you take a heterosexual couple, it is just as likely to be from the male partner as the female partner, which just flies in the face of what we're taught from a very young age. So the general rule of thumb is it's about a third male factor infertility only. It is about a third female factor infertility only. And then it is about a third that is joint or unexplained. And so, really, I mean, look, it takes two to tango, right? You want to have a healthy baby, you got to have a healthy sperm and a healthy egg. And so, it's important that people have that context, because it is easy to dismiss it as, just something that you produce. But no, you need healthy sperm to have a healthy baby.
Something that is so logical is something that is also something that you just don't think of. You're you were like healthy egg, healthy sperm, healthy
Yeah,
baby. But I I mean, I can just remember, I don't know about how it was for you. I remember my health class all those years ago
yeah,
where you took the women aside and like they learned all about, their reproductive side,
yeah.
and then the men were taught how to use condoms. But really that's kind of an injustice, because what do we know on actually creating and maintaining healthy sperm?
Yeah. And well, what a lot of men don't know, so your sperm quality is a biomarker for your overall health. So there are some common sense things that you can do to make sure you have good sperm quality, and that's, working out, eating decently well, sleeping recently well, not doing hard drugs. In fact, actually, there's a lot of research suggesting things like cannabis are actually pretty bad for your sperm quality. Drinking is bad for your sperm quality. So there's a lot of common sense things that you can do as a man to make sure you have good sperm quality. There's also a lot of things that are not intuitive for a lot of men around things that might affect your sperm. Probably the number one is around testosterone. So you might think that testosterone is a net good, right? Like, we're men, we want more testosterone. And what's happened is, increasingly, it's a very fast growing industry. Men are taking testosterone replacement therapy, TRT. They're injecting testosterone into their bodies. What they don't know is that actually shuts down your sperm production altogether. So any man who's listening who's on TRT, you should know that you are effectively infertile right now. And so we have a lot of men who choose to freeze their sperm before starting TRT, just to make sure that they've got some good stuff saved up for later. And we have some men who'll actually go off TRT when they want to start their fertility journey. There's also a lot of factors around heat. So the reason that testicles hang from the body is to keep them at a cooler temperature than your body temp. And so, actually, anything that exposes your scrotum, your testicles to heat is bad for spermatogenesis, which is the creation of sperm. So, like, if you're hitting the sauna every day, if you're in the hot tub every day, if you're taking long bike rides, right, and your balls are kind of pushed up, against the seat, if you got your laptop on your lap all the time and that bad boy is running hot, all of those things are going to negatively impact your ability to produce healthy sperm. And then there's a lot of things. So that there's been, I need to be careful in the way that I say this, because it's not definitive. We don't have proof of causation, but there is correlation between microplastics being in your bloodstream and how that affects your ability to have healthy kids. How that may create or lead to DNA damage is going to show up in your sperm as well. So all of those things are kind of factors for anyone who's thinking about what their sperm quality looks like. But if you're reasonably young and you're reasonably healthy, you should have reasonably good sperm quality. And if you don't, that's a canary in the coal mine that says, hey, there may actually be something deeper here. Over the years, we have used our semen analyses to help diagnose people with genetic conditions. We helped diagnose someone who had familial Mediterranean fever, FMF. We helped diagnose someone who had an STI that they didn't know about, because we could see the bacteria swimming around in the sperm. We were saying, hey, there's something going on here. You should get it checked. They had an STI they didn't even know about. So your sperm is actually pretty fascinating. You learn a lot from what's in your body.
I don't know how in under 10 minutes you've turned sperm from the butt of the you've
The butt
turned
of the joke to the
sperm
penis of
from
the joke.
yeah, exactly. Sperm is now the hero.
Yeah.
So I was like, put a
Yeah.
cape on it. It's doing a lot. No, but really, I was like, there is so much that we don't know about microplastics. There's so much we don't know about how it affects our body, but it's good to know that we at least know enough about sperm that it can be a great identifier for a lot of things. I know erectile health has correlations to heart disease. So
Totally.
it's fascinating that medicine's taken this really big turn, and especially in men's health, that we're finding correlations between our genitals and how to actually live just an overall more comprehensive and better life.
Yeah, it's I mean, we have a lot of clients who actually choose to test their sperm on a regular, semi-regular basis. I test my sperm pretty often. Obviously, that's the company that I run. It makes sense that I do. We don't have a sexual harassment policy the same way that another company might, because it's totally normal to talk about masturbation at work.
Right.
Where I work at Legacy might not be the same elsewhere. It's pretty fascinating for me. I test my sperm every couple of weeks, and I can actually see how my lifestyle factors are affecting my sperm quality. So when I'm in periods of super high stress, things are tough at work, you can actually see my sperm quality plummeting. And if I'm going on vacation and I'm relaxed and things are great, you can actually see my sperm quality building back up. And it's interesting because they always tell couples who are struggling to conceive that sometimes you just need to relax. I hate to say it, there's actually some truth to that, certainly on the male side, because actually the lower your stress levels on average, the better your sperm.
Listen, all I'm hearing is we need to take more vacations and
Yeah.
like kick our feet up from time to time.
4-day work
Doctor's
week.
orders.
Yeah. The beach, throw back some daiquiris, but not too many because it's bad for your sperm.
Yeah. So you mentioned that it's the company you work for. So tell us a little bit about Legacy because we were talking about this a little before the show started. I was like, sperm. Instantaneously, I thought about like sperm banks. Like that's
Yeah,
the only place I know that ever talks about it. And
sure.
it's just this, I'm pretty sure there's so many misconceptions. So
Yeah,
tell us how you kind of rebranded or you
yeah,
brand.
yeah. I mean, we brought it into the modern age. I mean, most sperm banks are still set up and living as if they're in the 1970s. Today, so we developed a mail-in kit. So actually, you order this bad boy online, you actually get it to your home the next day. It's got everything you need to produce a sperm sample, then ship it back to our lab. Whole process, takes what, 48 hours end to end kind of thing. Right. And it's when I first went, so I had a personal experience many years ago that I'm happy to share more about. But when I first walked into a sperm bank, probably 8 or 9 years ago at this point in Cambridge, and they led me to a small room with a black leather couch and porn magazines on the table, and there's a television in the room. But if you turn the TV on, it shows the video that was playing from the last person, and it's paused at the scene where they stopped watching, right? And you're under a time limit because someone needs to use the room right after you. And you're imagining every bare, hairy ass that has been in and around this room. And you're sitting there. And like for them, it's just so clinical and medical. It's like, hello, sir, welcome. Here's the specimen cup. Please produce the specimen, wash your hands and genitals, and the doctor will follow up with you in 7 to 10 business days with your results. And just having gone through that experience, it was so mind blowing to me that this is an area that was just so overlooked. And the deeper and deeper I got into this world, the more obvious it became that actually we're kind of undergoing a male fertility crisis right now. Like there's this, we're about to live the sperm apocalypse. Like if you look at the trend lines, we are moving towards sperm count zero. We are moving towards a world where men don't even have enough good quality sperm to be able to conceive naturally. And that's all happening at a time when birth rates are lower than ever before in the world. Nobody's having kids, right? At our time of recording, the Trump administration is talking about having $5,000 checks to women every time they have a child, and tax credits to families, and benefits to people who have larger families, and potentially allocating a certain percentage of scholarships to people who have families. Like it's being treated as a crisis, and I think rightfully so, by the US government right now. So you look at all of this stuff in a world where we're going through major sperm quality issues, and where historically you would have to go through a sperm bank and go through the experience I just described in order to test or freeze your sperm, and we just did it differently. So I've been running the business almost 7 years. I'm the founder CEO. We're now the largest male fertility clinic in the country. We are doing more semen analyses and sperm freezing than anyone, and We've raised about $50 million from various investors, from Bain Capital Ventures to Y Combinator to celebrities like Justin Bieber and DJ Khaled and so on. And all of it is with the aim of normalizing the concept of male fertility, of bringing this industry, dragging it kicking and screaming from the 1970s into the 2020s, and ultimately helping people have more healthy kids. Every person that we work with is a person that we know that we are helping give the opportunity to have a healthy family someday, right? Like we work a ton with the LGBTQIA plus community, right? Let's say, you're not going to go down the regular heterosexual path, a man and a woman having a child. You know that you're going to have a more complex fertility journey. You may choose to freeze your sperm today and know that maybe 10 years from now, when you find the person you love and you want to settle down, you'll be able to use that sperm with a third party, let's say a surrogate, in order to have a child that is your own. Every time we're working with someone like that, it's just we're not only helping solve the birth rate issue, like we're not just helping solve the male fertility issue, but we are fundamentally at a very human and very real level helping people build the families that they want to have. And it feels damn good. It really does.
I can only imagine, as somebody who's been in healthcare for a few years, it really is undescribable feeling when you can see your work in action and see how it changes people's lives. Now, you started to paint a vivid picture and make it more real for people, but let's take it a step further. How long can sperm be frozen?
Yeah. I love
Because
this.
you talk
Yeah.
about like maybe 10 years down the line, 15, like, is there a limit to how long you
Yeah.
can freeze sperm or what we can
Yeah.
do while it's frozen?
I love that question. And anyone who's listening, I want you to ask yourself what you think that number is, because I'm about to tell you, but I want you to think to yourself what you think that number is. And I'll start by saying eggs should typically only be frozen for 5 to 10 years, varies by country to country and, clinic to clinic. Embryos last a little bit longer, they're a little bit more stable. And so you can freeze them for maybe a little bit longer than just eggs. But here's the thing about sperm. Here's the magic about sperm. Eggs are among the most complex cells in the human body. Sperm are among the simplest cells in the human body. And so, because they are so simple, and because we produce so many of them, like the average guy is producing 39 million sperm or more in one ejaculation, because we are producing so many of them, you can freeze sperm indefinitely with no loss in quality. You can freeze your sperm for 50, 100, 1,000 years, we believe, for 1,000 years with no loss in quality. There was recently sperm that was unfrozen after about 40 years and then used to have twins. So that is what is so damn cool about this to me. I could freeze my sperm. I mean, I froze my sperm when I was 26. I'm 36 now. I could be 66 and using that young, healthy, high quality, hot shit. I was at the peak of my health back then. I can use that to have a kid.
That is just such a wild thing to me that I never would have thought that sperm is a non-perishable, so to speak. Like you could just put that bad boy on ice and it just endure. That's crazy because you're right. The younger you are, the healthier you are, the more elasticity your body has, probably the better quality sperm you have. So there's really not a downside to, just to be safe, putting some aside for a rainy day because,
For a
like
dry
you said,
day.
we're in a crisis right now. So you never know with the way the economy's set up. People don't know if they're going to have kids anytime soon, if they can afford to. So I think it's really cool that if you're like, hey, this is something I still want to do, but we might just have to wait. We can just call it legacy. We're not
Put it
putting
to
bottles
use.
on ice. We're just putting loads on ice.
Bottles of the club.
And then when it's time to celebrate, pop that bad boy out and get you pregnant.
I mean, that's exactly it. Look, I've always thought of it as an insurance policy, right? Like
Okay.
it's very reassuring for me to know that I've got sperm frozen, and it's even more reassuring to me to know that I froze it when I was younger and healthier. And there's a lot of studies showing that the older you get, the worse quality your sperm, the more DNA damage in your sperm, the more risks there are to the mother of your future child, to the pregnancy itself during that 9 month period, and also to the child that is eventually born. So autism is a great one. If you are 40 or above, you are about 6 times more likely to have a child with autism spectrum disorder versus if you're 30 or younger, right? Like that's just one example. There's a lot of examples like this that just point to the fact that sperm is better quality when you are younger. And so I always think about it as an insurance policy. It makes me feel better the same way that I have homeowners insurance, the same way that I have personal insurance, the same way that I have, my company has business insurance. These are just some like matter of fact things that you should be doing. And you mentioned the economy. Again, at time of recording, we're in a very unstable time, right? Like tariffs have just been announced. We're at the beginning of potentially trade wars. We don't know. I mean, the stock market has plunged over the past couple of months. Crypto has plunged over the past couple of months. People are feeling their wallets tightening. The cost of things are going up. There's a very real chance we may be in a recession. And so, in that world, most people choose to put off having kids. Makes sense. It's logical. Of course. I mean, if you're not sure you can afford a child, which by the way, it's a damn expensive thing to choose to do to have a child, right? You may choose like, hey, I might just wait a few years. And it actually reminds me of a case study that I did in an interview in 2009 when someone asks me what happens to the mattress industry during a recession. Interesting question, right? I was like,
It
oh,
re
I'm assuming there's some natural ups and downs and
yeah.
maybe demand would go down and so on. And the interviewer said, no, really think about it. Really think about it. And I stopped and I paused and I thought about it. And I said, well, when am I going to buy a mattress? How often do you buy a new mattress? Oh, once every 5, 10, 15 years, whatever. So actually what happens is during a recession, mattress sales like go down to zero because you will wait 1 or 2 years to buy a new mattress till the economy gets better. And interestingly, choosing to have a child is actually kind of similar in that sense. I know it's a weird analogy,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things that you'll say, I'll just put it off for a year or two. And so, but these things can go on for much longer than you think. And in that world, having your sperm frozen, right? If we are in a strange economic time, can make sense if you're choosing to hold off for a few years.
I never would have thought that buying a mattress and having a kid had so much overlap, but you're right.
They fall into a similar bucket of something that you choose to do that is affected by how the economy is doing, and that you could choose to do it now. You could also choose to wait a
Right.
couple of years, and it sometimes may be logical to hold off on some sort of a financial expense or investment. Obviously, let me be clear that mattresses and babies are extremely, extremely different, investments, but
100%.
the base logic is actually pretty similar.
I mean, now, unless you're one of those people who like to do weird flexes, like for some people, the weird flex used to be I go out every night. Now, the weird flex at the time we're recording this is how many eggs do you have in your fridge or can you
Yeah,
spare?
totally,
Or
totally.
how
I
many?
mean, I don't want to brag, but I got a dozen. I think they're expired. But they're there.
And then soon to be the new flex is how many kids do you have? Like
Yeah.
you can afford multiple? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
you have stability. You got a little bit of money.
You can afford it, yeah.
Yeah. But not only how many kids do you have, what schools are they going to?
How many frozen future kids do I have? I got a lot of that.
You know what? I have to say, like I have to ask you, when you're out and about or just like at a party, how many sperm jokes do you make? How many kid jokes do you make? Like I feel
All
like
right,
you
Josh,
have to be loaded up with a few.
loaded up. Josh, I'm going to give you some real talk right now. 90% of the time, I love it.
Yeah.
80 to 90% of the time, I love it. Like,
Yeah.
I find this to be such a fascinating topic. I love the work I do. I love my team. I love the people we serve. Like, it's just so cool to be able to talk about something that is so sensitive in a very interesting and scientific way. And usually the men are interested, right? Because obviously it affects them.
Right.
Women, I think, oftentimes are grateful that we're changing the conversation, right? That fertility is not just a women's issue. My friends who are kind of non-heterosexual are happy to be having the conversation because they're already thinking about it. So it's just like it appeals to a lot of different personality types. And so the downside is it is a very dominant topic of conversation. Like when I say I work in male fertility or sperm, right? Like I have a spectrum of how I describe my job. On days where I'm feeling a little cheeky, I'll say I work in sperm. And that's just like record scratch halting. Everyone's like,
Right.
what? And on days where I really am not in the mood, I'm like, I work in healthcare. Right. So like there's kind of a spectrum
Yes.
because I know that the second I start talking about legacy, it's just going to dominate the conversation for the next half hour. But we'll probably, get a few new customers by the end of the conversation. So I will say my personal preference is I try to come up with puns that haven't been made before. Like that's how I keep it, interesting for myself. Because I get a lot of the same jokes every time. People are not as creative as they think they
As they
are.
think they are. Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
And so, the number one joke I get is, oh, so if you send me the kit, are you going to help me? Is someone going to help me produce the sample?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm going to send a headshot of myself. I'm going to put it in the kit for you so you can look at it the whole time. All right. And then very quickly you realize people will match your tone.
Yeah.
Every guy, I don't know, it's like something innate in us. Every guy needs to make one joke about sperm. They just need to get it off their chest. They need to blow their load, question asking wise. All right. And once they've done that, they will then match your tone. If I'm being serious about it, they'll be serious about it. If I'm being jokey about it, they'll be joking about it. But when I'm engaged, like I talk, look, it's a serious business, it's a serious topic. Obviously, there's some humor in it, but it is fascinating that people will really match your tone. And so I've leaned in over the years. You know, my friends have been calling me the sperm king for about 7 years. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I bought the URL spermking.com.
No.
If you go to spermking.com, which by the way, I had to buy for $3,000 in Bitcoin from a German hacker, it's a whole story. But if you go to spermking.com, it redirects you to my personal LinkedIn. How's
That's
that for branding?
that is it, guys. Like after you're done listening to this, or you're probably on your phone, you can open up a web browser. Let's check out Sperm King. That's
Mhm.
I almost feel like you could put that on a resume.
Just make sure you don't put spermkink.com. I think it'll take you to a very different kind of website.
It might still help you
Or
produce a
do, or do.
sample.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. It's 2025, you know?
Sorry to interrupt, but as you know, it's Masturbation May, and we're all about owning our pleasure here on the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. And if you haven't tried Foria's Intimacy and Sex Collection yet, what are you waiting for? It's the glow up every solo session needs. Because sometimes it's just me hits so good that who needs a plus one? So if you're ready to turn your arousal all the way up to 11, then head on over to foriawellness.com and check out their entire shop and get 10% off today by using code TNSB. All right, back to Josh on a different day. Now, I had a very interesting conversation a few weeks back with another doctor who deals with male fertility, mostly dealing with like erectile function. But we were talking about how technology has really entered that space and helped improve longevity, duration, and use. Is tech,
Yeah.
relating to
Yeah.
this field as well, with you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, there is an element that you can't really speed up with tech. There's a physical element, right? If it's erectile dysfunction, the man needs to get an erection. If it's, sperm related, I mean, he needs to both get an erection and then ejaculate. Both of those things are not something that can really be changed by technology. However, everything we do is underpinned by tech from the ordering experience, right? Like, for example, you go to our website, givelegacy.com, you fill out some information, you answer some questions about yourself. We'll create a customized package for you. We'll say, hey, here's what we think you need based on what you have told us. Number of kids you want, your age, any supplements you're taking or medical issues you have, or kind of life events that are happening for you. We can customize all of that. At our lab, everything is tech enabled. So even when you get your kit to your house, you're scanning a QR code that takes you through a guided registration every step of the way. After you get your results, you're going to have access to a dashboard that is personalized to you. All of it is automated. All of it is actually fairly sophisticated. Our lab end to end, from all the checks that we do manual checks, we do automated checks. From how we analyze the samples, there's a lot of automation that goes into the semen analysis that we do. I mean, everything we do is tech enabled, which is why we are able to offer this at a scale and a volume that no one else can do, right? So an average clinic may handle 5 or 10 samples a day. We're easily handling 100 plus per day because we're just able to do things at economies of scale that most companies cannot, because we have incorporated technology into everything we do.
Speaking of, incorporating tech and being able to just handle a wider load. Wow, like
Nice.
it
A lot
wasn't
of
even
people wish they could
intentional.
handle a wider load.
No, what if something like this, because everybody's thinking about it, is like, "Oh, this seems like a great idea, like I need to do this," or like we were talking about how in the long run, with the way things are shaping up, maybe this is a wise decision. What does something like this cost? Is it affordable? Because you say you test your sample a couple
Yeah.
times a week,
Well,
or
I get
not a
I
week,
get a
but
discount, as you can imagine.
they're not charging you market price? What? No, but like you say people do test their sample frequently. Is it something that is affordable to do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I'll pause for a second just because I think it's interesting for someone to come up with a number in their head for what they think that something like this might cost, right? Because IVF is $10,000 to $15,000 a pop. Egg freezing is usually in the $10,000 range. For us, a semen analysis is $295. And for us, sperm freezing on a yearly basis is somewhere in the $100 to $150 a year price range. By the way, we're covered by almost every insurance company. So we have
Yeah.
insurance coverage in all 50 states. We have about, I think, what is it, about 10,000 employers that actually offer us as an employee benefit among their fertility benefits. If you are in the military, whether you're a veteran or you're active duty, you can actually get this paid for entirely by the military through your insurance. And then we have some special discount programs. We work a lot with the military, we work a lot with the trans community, we work a lot with cancer patients, we work a lot with kind of people who have unique circumstances. And so, in many of those cases, we find ways to make the whole process more affordable, because for some people, a few $100s out of pocket is still a real expense. But I mean, the real answer is this costs a fraction of what most people think it's going to cost.
I mean, that's literally just a
Yeah,
weekend out, at least here in
yeah,
Nashville.
oh
I
yeah,
was like,
oh yeah. And in New York, that's a few drinks with a buddy, or a few drinks with a few buddies.
now, if starting a family and preserving your legacy is worth giving up 1 weekend of fun, I don't know what
Yeah,
is. I'm still baffled that we're having this conversation because so many questions I never thought about are starting to come to the surface. And I feel like I'm learning some really valuable information that is really relevant right now because I just turned 30 this year. So that's
yeah,
kind of the point in time where people
yeah.
start thinking,
Yeah, it's when
hey,
you're kind of starting to think seriously about, all right, I want a family. What's dating going to look like? What do I
exactly.
want my partner to be like? All that stuff.
Yeah. And I think I might have to check with my insurance carrier to be like, is legacy covered under us? Because I might need to might
Yeah.
need to go to the bank. Might need to
Yeah.
make a deposit. Yeah.
Best part
All
is
right.
you get to do it from home.
Listen, and there's no
Yeah.
place better. I don't have to worry about how many
Yeah.
sweaty butts were here.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
don't have to worry about if they have what I like. People don't even have to know what I'm
You're
doing.
you're you're just at spermkink.com, just figuring it all out.
Listen,
It's interesting, by the way. There are actually studies showing that a sperm sample produced at home is actually typically of higher quality than a sperm sample produced in a clinic, because the person is more comfortable. They can take their time. It's a better overall experience. You're actually producing a better sperm sample when
I
you're
can
doing it from home.
imagine, I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
sperm has performance anxiety too,
100%,
They don't
100%,
they don't like to do their business in public.
100%.
So, how long have you been doing legacy? You're the largest, not market, you're the
Yeah, male
largest
male
not
male fertility
distributor
clinic,
either.
male fertility clinic. Yeah,
Yeah, you're the
yeah, yeah,
largest clinic, in the
yeah.
US. That couldn't have happened just overnight. How long have you really invested into this to make it what it is today?
Yeah, 7 years, 7 years of blood, sweat, tears, and semen. There's a line that I love. So we've gone through a lot of kind of entrepreneurship programs. For those who are familiar, we went through Y Combinator several years ago. We were founded out of the Harvard Innovation Labs back in 2018. And there's this quote that I love about entrepreneurship, which is very applicable here. The quote is as follows: "We do this not because it is easy. We do this because we thought it would be easy." And if that ain't the truth about most things in life, but anything worth doing is worth doing well. And a big part of success is just showing up. It's just showing up through the good and the bad. And you show up every day, that's already going to put you in the top 1%. And we are in the very fortunate position of probably being in that 1% of startups. Y Combinator recently had included us on their list of top companies that had come out of Y Combinator. I think it was Business Insider that had ranked us as one of the top future unicorns, companies that will be worth $1 billion or more. I think the Financial Times had ranked us as one of the fastest growing startups. So just we've been very fortunate in that sense. But I got to tell you, it's tough. It's tough. It's a lot of work, and you wake up every. I mean, we just paid, I think, about $45,000 out of pocket for tariffs from kits that we just shipped into the country. So you get these unexpected. I mean, COVID was absolutely a massive shift to the business. For anyone who's following the economy and fundraising markets boomed and then, totally collapsed. But keep showing up. And I think as long as you and your team feel connected to the mission of what you do, the people you serve, the vision of where it is you're trying to take your business, I think that with that, that's kind of what keeps me going. And it's what keeps people coming.
Having a company who you trust, who can handle their stuff and is consistent goes a long way. I was literally just thinking of, like I said, like, how does a company like this start? in my head, I was thinking, if this was on Shark Tank, like what would the pitch have been? You know, like
You know what's funny? Actually, we had been shortlisted for Shark Tank right before COVID hit. They
no.
wanted us to have they wanted to have us on the show, and then COVID hit, and we never, we never followed up. They never followed up. But yeah, we were going to be on it, which is pretty cool.
All right, listen. I think this is a great opportunity right now. Okay, what was your shark pitch have been? That's what we want to hear.
The shark pitch was easy. The shark pitch was, look, male fertility crisis. Nobody ever talks about it. We're spending all this time focused on the women, but actually the man is an equal partner. Again, in a heterosexual sense, and guys should be testing their sperm. But you don't want to go to a clinic. You don't want to jerk off in a room that 100 people have jerked off in that day. What if you could do it from home, ship it to our lab, get your results within 48 hours? Whole thing is easy. You feel like you're living in the modern century. And with one ejaculation, right, you now have an insurance policy to make sure you can have a family someday. And by the way, having a family is something that 99.9% of the population thinks about. And by the way, this isn't a multi-thousand-dollar product. This is something that you can pay a couple $100 for that may even be covered by your insurance. Boom. Why isn't every guy in the United States doing this? Why isn't every 20-year-old in the United States doing this? Why isn't every college student doing this? And in fact, why aren't the parents of college students buying this for their kids before they go off to college and they're doing sex, drugs, and rock and roll? That was a pitch in 45 seconds. How'd that feel?
Loved it. I was like,
Yeah.
instantaneously, I was like, I want to grab
Yeah.
one of those in a box of condoms, wrap it up. We're leaving them at every dorm room. Okay.
Kind of. Yeah. 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 Wrap it before you tap it and freeze it. I wish I had something that rhymed with that. Freeze it before you tease it. I don't know.
Listen, I was like, the power of editing. We can just edit it and
Yeah,
it'll
that's
just
right.
sound like you said it smoothly. The brain is wild. I don't know why that came to mind, but it's funny that you actually were on that short list for Shark Tank.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I think this is probably also one of the most fitting segments that we're about to roll into. And that is our quickie questions, because
Quickie
what's
questions.
quicker than producing a sample for
30
some of
seconds.
us? I think it's a cool way for us to connect with the audience because I like to do it. I don't think
Let's
we
go.
really need
Let's
other
go. I'm
reason.
in. I'm in.
All right, we're gonna let the sperm do the talking here. If your sperm could talk, what would it roast you for?
Oof. Well, first of all, about 96-ish% of your sperm is abnormal. So they've got two heads or a funky tail or something about them's off. So actually, I'm going to roast them first. Now, it would say, you have started a male fertility company and you have frozen your sperm God knows how many times, and you still have not managed to have children that you know of.
That's the key word right there that you know of. I'm also salty that like I feel like my sperm just got attacked there. You try to say my sperm look like Quasimodo, like they're
Yep.
like
Yep. Yep. Big percentage of them are.
the fun facts, they keep rolling. I like that. Name of the show, Not So Bad, Bachelor Pad. We know you haven't started a family, but what's your current relationship status?
Uh, Put me on the spot here. Recently started seeing someone. And one of the first conversations I had to have with her was, "Hey, P.S." So she's a doctor, so thankfully it's a little bit
Gets
more,
it.
yeah, she gets it. But one of the first conversations was, "Hey, by the way, I got a whole bunch of sperm frozen. Hope that's cool, and hope that we may use it someday."
If, as long as that wasn't date one conversation,
It was. I'm all in on this. All right, I'm all in. I'm all
it,
in. And
what?
honestly, if a girl doesn't get that, and if she doesn't appreciate that, then she's not for me.
Listen, date one, we're gonna get dirty martinis and talk about
That is
fertility.
dude. Were you there? That is
I was the
exactly what we
bartender.
did. That is exact. I knew you looked familiar.
I cannot. That is why I think we need to come up with a short list of. I think there is a short list of questions that you don't ask on the first date, and it's,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna freeze some sperm for you. Hopefully, it's good. Okay, speaking of partners, and you just started seeing somebody. I always like to ask this: what do you think is a more intimate or appealing kind of feature for you? Physical touch or eye contact?
I'm gonna go with physical touch, because eye contact, when held properly, can be extremely intense and very electric. But I think there's no replacement for, honestly, it's gonna sound a little lame, but just hugging someone you really care about. That feeling of having someone you care about held close. Because I don't think there's any feeling that's comparable.
I get it. I don't care what people say. Anybody who listens to the show knows this. I'm a little bit of a simp. I was
Yeah.
like, I love a good back scratch and a cuddle.
Yeah.
I was like, I
Nothing,
don't care if
nothing
you
wrong
use
with
what
that.
spoon, but like just a little
Nothing
cuddle
wrong with
just makes
that.
you feel good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You already gave me one sperm fact, but what is the wildest thing that you've learned about sperm that just blew you away?
There are theories around epigenetics that suggest, in small sample sizes, but there is some limited evidence to suggest that may be true, that trauma can actually be passed on from one generation to the next through the sperm. And so there was one study. I'm gonna. It's been a while since I read this study. It was done on mice. I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but it was mice that were introduced to the smell of vanilla and were then electrically shocked every time they smelled vanilla. Their offspring had a natural aversion to the smell of vanilla. And there is some belief that there are some experiences that can somehow be kind of internalized by the sperm and passed on to the child genetically. And again, I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but this whole concept that that stuff can be passed on, like an experience can be passed on, is very interesting.
I just think that takes trauma dumping to a whole new level.
I mean, there's dumping involved and there's trauma involved.
Okay, so legacy offers post thaw analysis. Yeah, we kind of talked about that a little bit. That's like checking your frozen pizza to see if it's still edible, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So after, so we do a couple of things. Let's say someone chooses to freeze their sperm with us. They'll get one of our kits. It'll arrive at their home. They'll do their thing from home, ship it back to our lab. Our lab then does a full semen analysis. Everyone gets that regardless of whether or not you're freezing. We'll then send it off to be frozen. And what we do is we will actually divide your sperm into two halves. So your semen sample divided into two halves. So actually, we will take the two halves and we will store them in different geographic locations to make sure that even if there is some natural disaster that happens in one place, your sperm is still safe somewhere else. And before we send it off, we'll actually unfreeze a very small amount, unfreeze and make sure that the sperm froze well, so that we have a guarantee that you're going to be able to unfreeze that sample in the future.
You just made that sound like a wine cellar. I was like, it's bottled and stored at the perfect temperature. When you come
Hey,
out,
negative 196 degrees Celsius in liquid nitrogen. Some people have sommeliers. We have our lab team. They will not sniff it though, and there's a lot. I'm not going to go down that.
then the HR department might have to get involved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good thing is I am the HR department, but
So I got one more question. If every man was required to give a sample at the age of like 25, how do you think that would change the dating game?
every dating app would have a check mark for every man about whether or not they've frozen their sperm or whether or not they've had their fertility tested.
Mhm.
It will show their potential partners that they're serious about thinking about what it's like to have a family, right? I think you're less likely to be perceived as a fuckboy if you have actually tested and frozen your sperm and you're kind of thoughtful about what it might be like to have a kid someday. And we will ultimately have more healthy babies born. More babies born, and those babies on average will be healthy.
I mean, I feel like that would be like the new height replacement. Like
Yeah.
everybody cares about height. How tall are you? No, it's like,
Yeah.
are you,
Yeah. How's your
you're,
sperm count?
yeah. Ooh, that's they have short kings. I can't think of anything off the. I was like, you may not be a short king, but you have a pretty light load. So I don't
Light
know.
load. Oh, that's funny.
I
That's
don't, I,
funny.
I don't know if I'm going to swipe right on this one.
It's like, oh, the guy is super good looking, but he's got a light load. I don't
Yeah.
know. He's 6'1", but he's got a light load.
Yeah. No, that actually brings me into a really good question. And I'm going to ask that before we wrap. Is we spend a lot of time talking about what this looks like from the company standpoint, from a male standpoint, but I want to know what it looks like from a practical future endeavor standpoint. When it's time to unthaw the sample, or do people just donate their samples? And because you said you like, how does that work?
Yeah.
How is that
Yeah. Pretty,
aspect
pretty
of legacy?
pretty easy. And we've had hundreds and hundreds of withdrawals, and we've had many pregnancies and babies and so on. It's pretty straightforward, right? If you have your sperm frozen with a legacy, you reach out to us. You got to give the team at least a 10 or 14-day heads up. We spit into gear. We'll ship your sperm to where it needs to get shipped to. And then you basically have two options. One is called intrauterine insemination, IUI, which is also known as the turkey baster method. You get the sperm, it thaws, and you basically insert it, and try to achieve pregnancy through the IUI process. That is less effective, but it's cheaper and it's easier to do. The other options, you go through IVF, in vitro fertilization. This is how a lot of couples have kids these days. You would actually take a sperm and you'd take an egg and you would basically put the two together. You would create an embryo and you would implant that embryo into the person who's going to carry the child. And that allows you to do things like genetic screening of embryos, right? So that's pretty common these days. You screen the embryos, you might make 5 or 10 embryos, you screen out the ones that might have certain genetic conditions, and then you implant the healthy ones into the carrier of the baby. So those are the two paths, IUI or IVF. Now, there's different kind of pros and cons to both, but in both cases, pretty straightforward. We do all the coordination with your clinic. You have to fill out a bunch of forms. You obviously have to verify. We make you jump through a lot of hoops around identity verification. And then, you and your partner are off to the races.
I don't know why you said identity verification, and I thought, is there sperm identity theft? Like, is that a thing? Are people out here doing that?
There isn't, but we don't take any chances.
All right. Like, listen, if I ever see anybody playing a sperm heist, I will lose every bit of like sense that I
We'll
have.
start planning the Netflix documentary from now.
That's right. Listen, if anybody watching, we get 20%, 10 apiece.
100%, 25, 25.
Yeah,
It's Shark Tank. We're back on Shark Tank,
we're not
25%.
lowballing ourselves.
Yeah,
No.
exactly. Exactly. This is a guy with a heavy load. I mean, come on, this guy deserves 25%.
Kyle, you are amazing. I think we learned a lot here. Like, I know I did, and hopefully, not even hopefully, I know anybody who started this episode stayed the entire duration and they learned just as much. I guarantee you have people right now ordering kits.
I hope everyone finished the episode.
Can you tell everybody how they can get started with Legacy? Where can they go to
Yeah.
get their kit?
Yeah, absolutely. Check us out at givelegacy.com, GIVE, Give Legacy. You can find us on Instagram. We're Give Legacy Inc., INC. And you can find us on most social media platforms. And if you want to get in touch, you can find me at spermking.com. Easy enough.
That'll never get old. All right, guys. Thank you so much for swimming along with us for another episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. I will see all you amazing bachelors, bachelorettes, and partner people next week for an all new episode. Peace.